Welcome to my free online breath mastery course. And it's completely free for you to access whenever you want, however you want, up here on YouTube. So you can sign in, tune in, enjoy this course. Now, I want to say a few words as well about what traditional yoga breathwork is about and why I talk about old school, who this course is for, how to use this course, and a little bit about purpose and ethics and a few other pieces that I think are important to understand as we go into this. Right? So hold with me for a while, stay with me for a while, because this course, I think you're going to get a lot out of it, a huge amount out of it. So first of all, traditional yoga, breathwork from yoga and cultures like Chinese Qigong and Tibetan Ati Yoga and Tunmo, the different practices from around the world, and there are many of them, are largely about creating superlative levels of well-being, very, very high levels of well-being. And they're also then about dissolving the illusion. Well, what illusion? The illusion of separation. They're about resolving and dissolving and making transparent the way our brains create the story of separatist materialism. And separatist individuated materialism is what the modern world runs on, that philosophy. So traditional yoga and breathwork is about resolving that illusion and also then finding the continuity of consciousness through all the states, waking, sleeping, dreaming, and the universe, the cosmos, as a kind of conscious field. So that's what traditional yoga breathwork is about. It's about dissolving the illusion and finding the continuity of consciousness. And like I said, superlative well-being. Now, why do I call my stuff old school? Because I'm old school. Because I've been through traditional approach to practice, and we're talking here of 50 years of daily practice in traditions such as yoga and breathwork and qigong and these kind of approaches. Now, old school because in the old days you had to work for a long time, you had to embody the practices. We live in a different age now, a digital age, the attention economy where attention spans are short and everybody wants to be an instant guru, an instant shaman, an instant something on Instagram, the Insta shaman, So that's the kind of world we live in where everybody wants everything now. And in old school, you practiced and you practiced and you practiced until you'd embodied the learning. So traditionally one would work with a teacher or a school or a sequence of practices for about 12 years or so. And then one was then authorized to teach. Now, I worked with my first school for 12 years and my second school for 12 years and my third school for 9 years. And whilst I was doing that, I also worked, say, for example, with the Native American shamanic tradition for 25 years. So we're talking about a lot of embodied practice woven together to create what I'm offering you here in this course. So old school is this. Now, of course, what happens in the modern world is everything gets diluted. We get a 200-hour teacher training or a 30-hour teacher training and so forth, where things get diluted because they're being sold as, in the market economy. So it's all about what you can sell and how to make money out of the teachings rather than about delivering authenticity, depth, and so on. So that's why it's old school. Now, who is this course for? Well, it's for you, basically. It's for anybody who wants to go into some kind of systematic depth practice where you're developing step by step through a process to go from where you are to where you can be in terms of superlative well-being, dissolving the illusion of separating and accessing and finding, remembering, if you like, the continuity of consciousness, not just in a peak experience, but in a lived, ongoing, day-by-day way. And that's what the training is really about. So for anybody who's interested in that journey. Now, how do you use this course? My advice is to go through the videos one by one, and when you come across a practice in the video, to play with that practice, to explore that practice on a daily basis. Now, in the trainings that I used to run, I used to invite people to do a 3x5 by 365, which means you do 3 practices a day, short practices, 365 days of the year. Those practices can vary depending on what you're doing, but the practices you put on the back of your already existing habits. So for example, when you wake up in the morning and clean your teeth, do a short practice. or a longer practice. Before you eat lunch in midday, which is a habit most people have, do a practice before you eat. It's really good for your digestion, but it's also a sensible way of building in that habit of doing the neurological, hygiene, if you like, of breathwork and or depth yoga. Now, another way to do it is do a practice an hour before you go to bed. You don't want to be doing focus practices directly before you go to bed. It'll keep you awake. But you can do other practices. And those 3 times a day gives you the 3 times a day, okay? And you want to be doing it 365 days a year. Now, of course, there are variations because for women, when you're getting progesterone cycles, progesterone is a respiratory stimulant. So ideally, your practice will be slightly different from somebody who doesn't have progesterone rolling through their body. So we need to pay attention to that. And if you want more information on that, I highly recommend you accessing my Science of Breathwork books. There's the Evolving Breath, Volume 1 and Volume 2 coming out this year. And they are available online. And there's a whole chapter in Volume 2 on the science of breathwork for women particularly. And there's one on sports and peak performance. There's a chapter on accessing and entering the transpersonal and so forth. One on stress, one on trauma. There's a lot in there. And the first volume is very much around functional breathing and resolving breathing pattern disorders. So get those books. If you want to DM me, find out more information, then direct message me, get hold of me. If you want to work deeper with me in any way on any of the practices, or you're confused about the practices in any way, direct message me. I'll get back to you. Sooner or later, I'll get back to you, okay? So you're going to use this course step by step and work through. Now, some of the videos on the course are a little bit old, and I'm aware of that. Some of the video and audio quality isn't the best, but there's a history there, so I thought I'd put them up. The later videos in the course are, much more refined in terms of their production, but the content I thought was worth putting up. So you'll find as you go through the training, for example, we revisit practices. We'll do one practice, and then later in the course, we'll revisit it again to take it deeper. So there's a range of ways of looking at the training there. Now, there are approximately 115 videos, that's approximately 115 videos up there. So if you looked at one video a week, it's going to take you a while to practice. That's 115 weeks. That's quite a period of time. That's 2 years, right? So you've got a 2-year program here if you wanted to do it that way, because then you could, do the practice for a week and then try the next one and try it for a week. Now, you must remember that in old school, sometimes, for example, my teachers would tell me to practice and I would have to practice something for a month or 2 months. So it's, 12 years of practice. So take your time, because the most important thing you can do is embody the practices. Embodiment is critical. It's not about learning up something in your head like an idea, and this is where digital attention economy goes. You just got an idea in your head and you think you've got something. You don't. It's just a cognitive neurological pattern in your brain. There's nothing embodied. There's nothing landed. And I've seen this with breath work where people get into duress, and the practices that are supposed to help them down-regulate, they don't have access to them because the prefrontal cortex is switched off under the influence of adrenaline and a bit of cortisol, and they don't have access to that capacity anymore. Cognitive patterns are no longer available. What's available is procedural, body-based habit. So the reason for doing a daily discipline, the old school reason for doing a daily discipline, is so that in the exigencies of daily life, and as John Kabat-Zinn called it, it is full catastrophe living. Life is rich with its demands and opportunities, with its crises and opportunities. And if you want to face into those well, you need to have those practices embodied, not simply as an idea. So the reason for doing that level of training in that way is so that you can actually live in a powerful way in this world, like really powerful. And that's the opportunity here, not just to live in a state of radical power, but also connected, understanding, knowing that continuity of consciousness, understanding the nature of the illusion and how that's presented in the modern contemporary Western world as the peak philosophy, which it certainly isn't because it's a huge illusion, right? So there's a lot there for you, okay? Now, Why would I put this course up on YouTube? Well, I've got a lot of reasons actually, but one of them is because I want to get this stuff up and out into the world. I'm not teaching breathwork as I'm not going to be doing that anymore. So what I'm doing is I'm putting this course up and out into the world for free for all the people who have worked with me to access. So please enjoy that. And for all those people who haven't yet come across this to enjoy and get into and dive deep into and get benefit from it, because I want to make the world a different place. I want this world much, much better, and we can change the world one breath at a time as we share these powerful practices into the world. So get in there, dive deep, and help us all make this world a better place. That's so important. Now, I am passionate about people reaching their potential, human potential. I want to see everybody shine. Can you imagine a world where everybody's living to their best potential, not living from fragmented, broken fear or, division or, harm in some way that's been manifest through their childhood? Can you imagine that? That would be an amazing world, wouldn't it? Yeah. So that's what we all have to create together, and we can do it together. So I'm putting it up there for that reason primarily, all right? Because I want this out into the world. Another reason for me is that I am jaded, shall we say, with the market economy of yoga and breath work. And as I said, the increasing dilution and selling of things that often the people selling it have very little understanding of. It's almost a triumph of marketing over content. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting this up there as content for you and anyone to access, and I expect nothing back in return from you. It's a gift for you, for everybody who wants to watch it. So enjoy it. Wonderful. Now, with regard to ethics, as far as I'm concerned, with breathwork particularly, and with yoga, what comes first is physiology. I'm a scientist, I'm an evolutionary biologist, neurobiologist, I'm trained in biology and many, many other things. What comes first is physiology. If we mess unconsciously with our physiology, we're messing with our cellular function. We're changing cell signaling, and we're changing the way our cells work and how that data goes from the cells to the brain. You can cause yourself serious harm with breathwork. And we've seen this. If you look at the old yoga texts, again, I've been practicing and studying yoga philosophy, like I said, for over 4 decades. So when you look at the old yoga texts, what you find is that they say things like, established in in physical well-being and your capacity to sit still for a period of time, like 20 minutes minimum, in a particular way of sitting. It's called an asana. Established in asana, under the guidance of your teacher, when you're ready, in other words, yeah, then followed by step guidance. Because if you don't work well with the practices, you can end up with what they call neurological harm or metabolic harm. And we know this now from Western science as well. If you're just doing breathwork practices that don't serve your bioindividuality and your physiology, you can be harming yourself. So step-by-step approach is ethical. It's sensible. It's intelligent in terms of the body, all right? So what we're going through is a step-by-step systematic approach. Excellent. And the second thing, of course, is functional breathing, a return to basic functional breathing before we start doing expansive hyperventilatory practices. The resolution of breathing pattern disorders. All these pieces are necessary as a primary way of beginning to do the work. And again, you can access an awful lot more about that in my books. So please tune into those books. That's The Evolving Breath, Volume 1 and Volume 2. It's available from Singing Dragon. It's up, the usual bookstores and places like that. So get yourself some copies. And in those books, there are QR codes for even more videos, even more video content. There's about 50 altogether of really good quality training. Again, going even deeper. So that. So, last piece of the puzzle I want to invite you for is the concept of conscious evolution, which is something I came up with about 20 years ago, which is the recognition of something very simple. We look around the world and we see a flower. We see a bee come to the flower. In our separatist, materialist way of thinking, we see a bee and we see a flower as two separate things. They're chunks in space-time. If we go back around about 60 million years or more, what we find is proto-flowers emerging and proto-bees, and the bee and the flower evolve together in relationship. And all there is really is co-evolution. Everything's evolving together. We are not independent of our environment. Our genetic constitution, our genetic protein creating capacities are in direct functional fit and relationship with the environment. When the environment changes, the organism changes because they're interwoven, interconnected seamlessly. Simply take a breath. Breathe in slowly. What you're breathing in is oxygen into all the 37 trillion cells of your body. All of that oxygen going to all of those cells is made by plants without exception. So plants are using sunlight to split water into hydrogen and oxygen, binding the hydrogen onto carbon dioxide to make sugars, which you then eat later one way or another down the heterotrophic line, whether you eat plants or animals, whatever you do, you're eating the result of that photosynthetic union. The other is oxygen, which goes into the air, which you then breathe in. So later on down the line, after you've eaten your food, inside the mitochondria in your cells, and the mitochondria were once a separate bacterium, 3.8 billion years ago, they were a separate bacterium. So you are a symbiont. We are all symbionts. We have trillions of bugs in our guts that keep us alive if we look after them well. We have trillions of bugs on our skin that give us immunity if we look after them well. We're symbionts. Everything is a seamless web of interrelated connection. There is only conscious evolution. If we mess with the world, mess with the environment, mess with other species, mess with everything ignorantly based on the illusion of separate chunks of stuff in space-time, separate materialism, what we do is end up harming ourselves because it's all connected. It's all interwoven. We harm the world around us, we harm ourselves, and we harm our own evolution and development. There's no species on this planet that's lasted more than about 4 million years. Our species is very young, at around about 200,000 years, and we grace ourselves with the name Homo sapiens, wise human. It's about time we wised up. And to wise up, we must understand the nature of seamlessness, the seamless web of interdependence. And again, old school is about resolving that illusion and taking us into the lived reality of that seamless web of interconnection as that. So welcome to the course. Enjoy the course on YouTube. Get what you can out of it. Enjoy it. It's up to you what you get. And take from it what you will. If you want to work more with me, if you want to go deeper, and if you want to just direct message me with any questions, like I said, reach out. I'd love to talk to you. Enjoy.